إذن أود أن أرحب بجميع المشاركات والمشاركين في هذا السيمينار عبر الويب أينما كنتم. أرحب بكم جميعا، وأرحب أيضا بالسيد ساشا فينوا. أهلا بك. أنا دينا جودة، سوف أدير هذا الحوار اليوم. أعمل مذيعة ومحررة لدى تلفزيون دويتشه فيله. ضيفنا اليوم هو الصحفي ساشا فينوا، وهو مدير قسم صحافة البيانات والاستقصاء في صحيفة زايت أونلاين، وهي تابعة لصحيفة دي زايت، وهي من أكبر وأهم الصحف هنا في ألمانيا. زايت أونلاين هي صحيفة إلكترونية يبلغ عدد مستخدميها في الشهر 15 مليونا. تعد بذلك من أكثر وسائل الإعلام الإلكترونية تأثيراً في ألمانيا. أهلاً بك سيد فينوا، تنضم إلينا أيضاً من برلين، من العاصمة هنا، وسوف أعود لك بعد لحظات بأسئلتي. المشاركات والمشاركين اليوم هم من مجموعتين مختلفتين، مجموعة مشروع Code Her ومشروع Data Against Fake News. أرحب بكم جميعا مجددا. بداية أود التنويه بأن هذا السيمينار سيتم تسجيله كي يتمكن آخرون أيضا من مشاهدته، وكي نتمكن من مشاهدته في وقت لاحق. للجميع مرة أخرى أهمية إلغاء صوت المايك في حال لم يسمعني أحدكم قبل قليل، ولكن يسعدني أن أراكم وأرى صورتكم. أمر آخر يتعلق بالقناة لسماع اللغة. بالأسفل على اليمين ترون رمز مثل الكرة الأرضية. يمكنكم اختيار أو نقر هذا الرمز بالأسفل على اليمين، واختيار سبانيش أو شبانيش، اللغة الإسبانية، وسوف تسمعون اللغة العربية. سوف أترك لكم لحظات كي تتمكنوا من القيام بذلك. على اليمين بالأسفل كرة أرضية، دولماتشن، اختيار اللغة الإسبانية. أمر آخر يتعلق بالأسئلة التي يسعدنا أيضا أن نتلقاها منكم، والتي تحبون أن توجهونها لاحقا إلى الصحفي ساشا فينوا. يمكنكم تدوينها على أو في خانة الدردشة، وأنا سوف أقوم بطرحها. إذن أتمنى ألا تكون هناك مشاكل تقنية لديكم، وأنه باستطاعتكم متابعة النقاش الآن مع السيد فينوا. أود بداية أن أعرفكم أكثر عن ضيفنا. فهو مدير صحافة البيانات لدى فريق البيانات والاستقصاء في زايت أونلاين منذ عام 2014. عمل قبلها لمدة 7 أعوام محرراً في القسم الإلكتروني لدى إذاعة هاسن وصحيفة فيتسلا. حاز ساشا فينوا على العديد من الجوائز تكريماً لعمله في مجال صحافة البيانات. أذكر منها على سبيل المثال جائزة المراسل الألماني عام 2017. نال أيضاً عدة مرات جائزة مالوفيخ إنفوغرافيك أوورد التقديرية للرسوم البيانية، ومن ضمن المقالات الفائزة نيران مشتعلة في ألمانيا. الصحفي ساشا فينوا هو منظم مشارك لدى هاكس أند هاكرز، وهي منظمة تساعد على تواصل الصحفيين والمبرمجين معاً. أهلا بك إذن مرة أخرى سيد فينوا. وفي البداية أود أن أعرف منك لماذا اخترت صحافة البيانات تحديدا؟ Hello again. Mr. Venohr. I would like to start today's session with why did you choose data journalism in particular?
Hello, all together from Germany. Thank you for having me. Well, there wasn't a day where I decided I want to become a data journalist in a couple of years. It was just happening. So it was my part in the R&D department from Zeit Online, just to work on concepts how to make our website better, but as a journalist. And this team was the first nucleus where we decided to drive first steps working with data journalistic articles. And there was great success from the first day. And then my boss said, what about working on a 5-day base only on data? And I said, yes. And that was a decision, but there was not a point where I decided to become a data journalist. It just happened to me.
ماذا تغير مع تأسيس قسم صحافة البيانات في عام 2014? What changed with the creation of a real data investigative team in 2014?
It was a very important decision from our chief editorial staff just to say we need an investigation team. That means we need a team who has more time to work on big stories, on investigations, and in the same step to say there's data all around and we need data in everyday work. And it was a very good decision because we earned a lot of awards, but what's more important is that we have a high reach with our data-driven stories and a lot of increasing readership. And I'm very thankful to be part of the team, and it makes me smile to be at Zeit Online, this team.
هل يمكن إنجاز مشاريع بطابع صحافة البيانات دون فريق متخصص في البيانات مكون من صحفيين ومبرمجين؟ Is it possible to realize or perform data journalistic projects without a data team of journalists and developers?
I think there are 2 points. One point is I think you need people who are able to work with data, to clean data, to find data in different sources, to use data on a daily basis. And that's another question. Do I need an interactive team? We have on top an interactive team who is able to develop coding, very special software for projects. But I think you don't need the second step. The first step is important to be able to handle data. And the second step, you can keep away and just try to work with the existing software like Data Wrapper or Google Maps. So you don't need an interactive team in the first step.
Could you maybe show us some of your projects, some of the articles that you conducted, and tell us how you got inspired to start to do that?
Of course. I will just paste the addresses to the chat from Zoom. So if you would like to use it on the same level in the browser, just feel welcome just to click around, and I will start to share my screen.
Okay, thank you.
So hopefully you can see it.
Yes, now we can see it.
Okay.
نستطيع
So the first project I want to show you as an example for our work is a story about what happened to German regions after Germany's reunification. As you know, a couple of days ago, we celebrated the 30th birthday of the United Germany.
Yes.
And you know, there was an eastern and a western part. There was in 1990, in October, there was a very bad situation for the Eastern economy, you know, after the socialism time. And many people decided to leave the Eastern part, go to the Western part in hope to have a better life, to find jobs. And we found a very interesting data set to understand what happened to the Eastern part. Till now, many Eastern regions lost a lot of people, and what we could use is official data from the Federal Statistic Office in Germany, and it's relocation data. So it includes every move from a person within Germany, crossing a border from a city to another city or another region. And it's data from 1991 till 2017. And what we saw was an untold story. Everybody knows in Germany that at the very beginning after reunification, the East lost a lot of people to the West. But the untold story was that there was a second wave of people leaving Germany. And I will show you, this is, as you see, a timeline. You see, and the yellow line moves from east to west. And this big problem, you see the huge loss of people right after falling the wall in 1989. And then, and that was new to me, you see around 2000, there's a second wave where, again, many people, very highly educated people, and many women left the East, and a situation, it's a demographic crisis still in the East. And you see how we try to develop a story. We call it scrolly telling. So you are in the article and you just don't need to click around. You can just scroll, and we are leading you to the story. But then at the very first parts, we want to enable you just to find your story. And now we are in a section in the article just to find, perhaps if you're from the East in Germany, you can find your region and you can just see, okay, how many people from my region left, moved to the Western part of Germany. So you can find your story. So this is the Eastern perspective. And later, if you are inhabitant from the Western part, you can see how many moves from the West went to the East. So everybody can find perhaps his own move or story. And if I go back to the first intro graphic, so you see all the small dots, every dot is a move, and every dot is a character, is a person. And I was very overwhelmed reading a tweet about our story, and a young woman, or a middle-aged woman, she twittered, I'm one of this dot leaving East. And it was just, that was the thing we wanted to tell. And I will go down in the article. One result of this demographic crisis, leaving many young people, is that the East is aging faster than the West because many young people left. This is a big problem, will become a big problem in a couple of years if you have a lack of young people for society. And as you know, we have the far right party AfD in Germany. And what we see, and we just combined data sets, so our move data set, and on the other hand, election data. And what we see in regions in the East where the most people left, the higher is the outcome for the far right extremists. So this is one important part in data journalism, to marry data sets and see a new picture. Looking for patterns is very important. And as you see new perspectives if you can just transform it and create a new data set. I don't know, how do we want to go further? This was my first example. Should we talk about it?
I would like to go on with my next question. I see like very complex like tables and charts, and how much work and how much effort lies behind all that. رأيت الآن يعني في هذه أو في هذا المقال الكثير من الرسوم البيانية يعني غاية في التعقيد. أود أن أعرف منك كم من الوقت تحتاجون لإنجاز مقال كهذا ورسوم بيانية كهذه؟
Well, as you see the authorship from this article. These are 8 authors, and they all have different roles. So we don't make a difference to have a developer, someone who does the design, or someone is writing the article. For us, everybody's on the same level. So it's a teamwork, and it's only possible if we are all authors. Everybody is part of the story, and you won't see in our articles something like author and it's a text hero, and down at the article somewhere design, a name, and development. So they are all on the same level. So as you see, 8 people, and I would say it was a project right over a couple of months. But if you just sum it up, I would say 8 people for 4 weeks. So that's, I would say, the amount of work.
And all of you know also or have programming skills, or is it like, does it vary from one journalist to another?
Yeah.
هل الجميع لديهم خبرات في البرمجة أم هناك تباين في المهارات المختلفة لدى الصحفيين؟
Yeah, it's completely different. But it's important for all team members to understand what is possible, what is impossible, and very important is to learn a language for all the different working people. So for me, for my first days, I was pure text journalist working in a local newspaper, and later I had to learn a language just to talk to developers, bring them to understand what I want, and vice versa. They have to understand me. And so it's a learning process over a couple of years now. And now everybody knows what is his task, and we can all discuss about design. It's not that easy. For many journalists, it's very easy to discuss, this is a good article, this is a good headline. But then suddenly design is a very important aspect in our work. And you have to learn to talk about design on a higher level than I don't like the color. You have to learn to discuss it. Does it work? Does it work on fingertip on this small device? So yeah, it's a long learning process, but yeah, with different characters and different knowledge about data or development.
Thank you. So maybe you wanted to show us
yeah.
Yes, second project. الآن سوف تعرض لنا المشروع التالي.
Yes, the next example is a story. As I mentioned, data journalism is always looking for patterns. And we wanted to learn about how can we find patterns about street names in Germany. Sounds on the first second very boring, or why looking on street names? Everybody knows you can just use Google Maps to just find a street in one city, but the result will always be one point because they want to show you the direction. But what we wanted to create is a database to see every common street names and their regional distribution in Germany. So we worked with data from the OpenStreetMap project. I hope you know it. It's a free resource where many people just creating the maps for the whole globe, and they are open, and you can just grab the data out. And we work with some people who know very good how to work with the OpenStreetMap data. But it was really surprising to see that there are regional patterns I didn't expect from my first idea. So
For example, هل يمكن أن تعطينا بعض الأمثلة? Could you give us examples?
Yeah, I can show you
yes.
Just an example. This is an example. So I grew up in the western part of Germany, and it's very common if you live in a small town or a bigger city. There's some areas where you find streets called Sudetenstraße, Sudeten Street, Ostpreußenstraße. These are all names included in this street names. These are regions from the former far eastern part from Germany before the end of the Second World War. And after the Russian army went in direction to Berlin, many people became refugees and they have to leave their home. And yeah, as you see, they find a new home in the new Germany. But if you look on the distribution of these names, remembering these older regions, you see there are no in the eastern part. So, and the result is in the former GDR during socialism, as you know, they were deeply connected to Russia, to the Soviet Union. And so they didn't want to see a remembering of that the Russian army just made them to refugees. And that's why we see this distribution. And I didn't expect this. And I will show you another example. It's a completely different perspective on this. You see the map of the second largest city in Germany, Hamburg. And what we did is just to count how many streets are named after a man or a woman. And you see the woman names are very far behind. Yeah? So we see a problem in our society, and we see it as a pattern on a street map. Or another example is, again, we see a pattern where the E said it's just the name Jugend, youth. It was very important for the GDR to cultivate a cult of youth, and they decided to name streets after it. And here again, another perspective, you see the street map of Berlin, the capital city from our country. And you see from the display street names, where was the first day they put the name on it. And you see different situations, and you see again that they have to rename a lot of streets after the Third Reich, the Nazi time, and the GDR. So just in one perspective, based on data, you see German history just in one spot. And that's what's so fascinating for me to work with this data, is just to shed light on something which is hidden. And I think it's a good example how to surprise readership with data-driven stories. That was the second example.
Don't you find all this data like overwhelming sometimes? Like it's such an enormous amount of data. How do you find like a pattern so that you can analyze, validate, and start to think of the way how you want to visualize the data?
Yeah, it's an important point.
I will
But you want to translate?
I will translate.
Yeah. I wait.
قلت أو السؤال الذي طرحته، هذا الكم الكبير من البيانات التي يتم جمعها، كيف تتم عملية تحليلها يعني تنقيحها، وكيف يتم في النهاية اختيار الطريقة أو الصور التي تعرض من خلالها هذه البيانات كي تصبح أيضا واضحة للقارئ ولمن يشاهد هذه الرسوم.
That's a very important point. Just, sometimes it's like a wood and you can't see the different trees again, and there's so much possible. But what we do is just to create a database, and we're able to ask our first question to the database. And there we can try different angles and see where's the magic behind, where can we find patterns. And what you see at the end from our street names article, you see this small field, and there's a point where we decided this first database we created just for our local use and research, we want to give this possibility to our readership. And you can just write everything into it. I will ask Mozart, the componist, the musician, and you can see everything you try, you see a result. So you see Mozart on 1,676 streets and squares in Germany, and you see the regional distribution for everything you can work, and you can just go deeper, you can just jump in, and you see at the end the real street. You see here direct neighbor to Beethoven, the other musician, very famous. So again, you can find your street or your name or whatever you're interested. You are part of the story, and that's so important for our work. Okay, I will go to the third example. Now we are talking about a very modern form having data. So we are talking about sensors. So if we talk about our smartphones, they are completely full with sensors. And as you know, the German Autobahn, the motorway in Germany, is for some people in the world famous because 70% of these motorways kilometers can be driven at unlimited speed. So you have no speed limit. I heard and learned that some people travel to Germany just only to hire a Porsche and just be fast as they can on the street. But on the other hand, there's a big discussion if you talk about traffic death or climate change, that people say that we are the only country in the world left to have an unlimited speed on the motorway. We need a speed ticket. And then you have different positions. Some people say they wouldn't change nothing. We can't drive as fast as you think because we have traffic limitations. We have works on the street, so we can't drive fast. And we wanted to ask the question, how fast are the people in Germany on the motorway? And okay, how to do this? And the idea was just to talk to TomTom. TomTom is a manufacturer having navigation devices for cars. And although we are talking about a story based on data in March 2019, and in this time they cooperated with Apple and the iPhone, iOS, and the Apple Map app based on TomTom data as well. And TomTom wants to help people to find the fastest track through the traffic. That's why these devices, they just tell TomTom where's this device and how fast is the car or the device moving. And we got this anonymous data for every kilometer of the German Autobahn network. And we could see where are the fastest tracks and how fast are they? How fast do they drive if there is a street, tempo limit? And for example, you can right here just say where are the fastest 10% of the network, or later you can go in and here you can see the distribution. So 1/3 of all drivers in whole Germany, they are driving faster than 130 kilometers per hour. So it's quite fast, and we found parts of the Autobahn network where all cars reached an average of 160 kilometers. So imagine how fast the fastest cars are. So we found that at one part in the southern Germany, there are the fastest 10% passing this point by an average speed above 200 kilometers. So it's really, really insane to drive that fast.
True.
And this is just a piece with facts. So if you're discussing about speed limits in Germany, you need this article to say, okay, how fast do they drive? How fast can they drive? And how fast will they drive? And so it's very important. Data is fact-based. And so it's very often if politicians are discussing about this topic, they're just pointing on this article.
I would like to go on with my next question. We talked about the info charts, the complex infographics. To what extent does data journalism appear in the print edition of Die Zeit, for example? Is it possible, since a lot of infographics are only digitally possible? إلى أي مدى تظهر صحافة البيانات في النسخة المطبوعة من Die Zeit؟ وهل يمكن إنجازها، خاصة وأن الكثير من الرسوم البيانية والتوضيحية تفاعلية في الأساس؟
Yes. Okay. On a paper-based product, you won't have an interaction layer. So it's quite sure that we need an online medium just to do interactives. But we have the newspaper, and we have a small magazine. And there is every week is a so-called Deutschlandkarte, German map, and every time's patterns for the whole country in it. So it's a weekly, every time article. In the newspaper, we have the problem, paper is limited, and I try to convince my colleagues at the print base, okay, I know you have to write your brilliant text, but please keep in mind, sometimes a graphic tells more than you can ever write. So, and I think we find a way, and but I need still to convince my colleagues.
Let's move on with our session to the pandemic in specific, in terms of did your data editorial staff get like more important and necessary during this time؟ لنسلط الضوء على عملك خلال الجائحة. هل اكتسب فريقك أهمية أكبر الآن، وهل أصبح أكثر ضرورية؟
Of course. I would say the beginning of the pandemic was the point where everybody understood that data is so important, and that every newsroom needs a team with the ability just to work with the data, to understand data, and to tell data on a daily basis. So the situation in the data journalism before the pandemic was you have sports or election where you have a huge amount of short time reactions, but all these events, they are planned. You know, there will be a soccer World Cup, you know, there will a general election in the next 4 months, and you are prepared. But the pandemic happened and nobody was prepared. From our side and from the other side, the government and the official authorities. And that was a key point where we understood, but we are quicker to learn. So we decided to take a part from the government authorities, because the general numbers for Germany lagged far behind, I think 4 or 5 days behind. But everybody wants to know what happens now. And we decided just to create a team on the side, focusing on grabbing all the data. We have 401 local regions in Germany, and decided we visit every website. We are giving them phone calls, emails, asking every day, what are your region numbers, and put them together. So we created a new, faster possibility to see what happens in Germany.
Have a better picture to the actual situation. So you have access now, or a better access compared to 4 or 5 months ago.
I'm not sure.
To the data. No?
To be honest, we are still we have still this hand-picking team, and we see we are still a little bit faster. So the government learned a lot, and they created API ways just to grab their data. But if we compare it, we see
API. Could you explain?
Oh, sorry. It's a way where you can just plug in and get the data outside. So you can just programming, developing, asking questions to this data point, and I need all death in the last week for all Germany, and then this data points give me back structured data. So it's very important for our work, but we're still working with our completely self-developed environment.
Could you show us some examples of the projects you performed during the pandemic? هل يمكن أن تعرض لنا بعض الأمثلة لمشاريع نفذتها خلال الجائحة في Zeit Online?
Yeah, I can say we have, as mentioned, a point where you can find everyday numbers, and we have a dashboard just on our landing page at the starting point at Zeit Online, and this is the dashboard I want to show you. You see just in the first picture the most important numbers, and you can just go around. We can just check if we have Morocco. Of course, we have Morocco. So you see, this is the huge wave, but I think you didn't have a first wave like we had in Germany. But so we can show you the numbers for all countries. And if you jump in, you're just in this article, and this article till now is the most successful article in history.
Sorry, I think I can't see the article right now. Oh, okay.
It's back. I can restart it.
It's okay. It's okay. Please go on.
Okay. So you can just write your region, and you find everything about it. You find numbers, how many people got infected yesterday. And that is one of the most question is what's the situation of the hospitals. So and that's what we show. We can show all numbers of free beds for intensive care, and you can see how many people died. So these are the key numbers, and I think it's very important to explain beyond the pure numbers. So just to give you, I hope you can see the screen again.
Yes, now I can see it.
So what you see is just a distribution of ages for people got infected. So if we go on the left in March, you see the red colored, these are elderly people. And now you see the second wave in Germany is driven by the younger people. And that's just one answer why we have less people dying in Germany, because the really tough infections where people die happens mostly for elderly people. And this is just another view. It becomes important for data journalists just to be good statisticians, because pure numbers are on one side, and on the other side you have to understand the behavior of numbers if many people are infecting. So I just want to show this example. This is an example of the so-called reproduction number, the R value. And it says, in theory, how many people an infected person infects. So if you have one person with corona, and how many got an infect based on this person. And if the R value greater than 1, the virus spreads exponentially. And exponentially, it's just a word, but to understand what it means is tough to understand. And we tried to show this in this interactive. So I will go back to 1. So if we go R value to 1, you see it's just flat because we have some infections, but they don't spread the virus. But if you increase, you see how fast this grows up, and you see on the left how many infected people are here. Now, if you have an R 1.3, so that means that we have an increase up to 300,000 new cases. And that's important just to give an understanding, what happens outside, and that we have to reduce this number R. So do you have questions, or
we could open the floor to your questions. نفتح الآن المجال ربما لأسئلتكم يمكنكم تدوينها هنا في خانة الدردشة. Okay. I think some are having problems with the sound, with the language. هناك على اليمين بالأسفل هناك رمز يشبه الكرة الأرضية يمكن نقره، ورجاء اختيار الإسبانية لسماع اللغة العربية. ولكن سؤالي الآن، هل هناك أسئلة تحبون أن توجهونها لضيفنا اليوم؟ Okay, so till now I don't see questions.
So I can show you another example.
Okay, so now that the questions started to appear.
Okay.
I have a question coming from Dua. Would you please tell us again about the tool you use to get street names in the streetscape stories?
Okay, the data source is OpenStreetMap. So there's the data from. And then we just worked with different tools like Python just to clean it and to combine it. But I think your question is about where to find the data. So it's OpenStreetMap, and there you find different possibilities just to get the data outside the maps, and then you can work with it on a local base with software like QGIS. QGIS is a very good tool to work on your local computer with geodata. And on the last mile, we needed to create a very fast database because, as you know, we allowed our readership just to ask everything to this database, and then you need a very quick response time for the database. But to keep it short, OpenStreetMap is a data source.
Thank you. We will go on with our next question. Emna Mukhtar is asking, when dealing with data, how do you make sure of the liability, even from the public institutions? How do you make sure that the numbers are reliable?
It's a very important question because but data journalism is journalism. So sometimes you have to trust a source. And just to give you an example for COVID-19, we have just different data sources. So if you're asking a hospital, how many beds with COVID-19 people are in your house, and we compare it to other data sources telling how many people got infected in this area where this hospital is, we can just, we would learn very quickly if there's someone lying on us, because it should be on the same level to see it. And this question can we ask to different regions, to different data sources, and there you can just make I think we can quite sure to understand what's happening. But sometimes you need to trust, to go back to the movements from the east to the west. There is no other source you can just hand over, because your only chance is to have this, this official data. But at this point, we trusted to the government because why shouldn't they lie in this case on us? So yeah, it's journalism. Sometimes you talk to a politician, you have to trust to him, or sometimes you won't trust him. So it's journalism, but based on data.
Maha Salah al-Din.
نعم.
Is I'm sorry, I was just going to read your question. So Maha Salah al-Din was asking, what is the programming language do you recommend that the journalists should know in order to be like fit in data journalism?
I have three answers. The first answer is just start with a spreadsheet. So if you want to do your first steps, just try Excel or something other like Google Spreadsheets. Easy to use tools, but you understand to think in data structures because you have different columns. It's a visual way to jump into the data. And in the second step, I would say you have to decide. You have two very good languages. It's Python, and you have the more statistical language called R, just the R, letter R. I would say it's just a question, just try it out. You can see a lot of free tutorials out in the internet. Just try out some first steps, what's better for you. So I would say sometimes Python is easier, just you need some 2 lines of codes, and in R you might need 6 lines of code to get the same, but they will always be a helpful friend to go to a goal and reach the goal. So it's just try it out, Python or R, and the first steps in a spreadsheet.
Thank you. We have more questions here. Aya Nabil is asking, what is the better way? Is it better to choose the idea first, then start like doing the research and collecting data, or is it like vice versa? You collect the data, and as soon as you have the data, you could start realizing a story. How does it work?
Again, data journalism is journalism. So you have different situations. Sometimes there's a source knocking on your door and say, I want to tell you something. And it's the same for data. Sometimes suddenly there's a data set and you say, wow, cool to have this data set. Let's start asking questions to this data set. And sometimes you're sitting in a room and say, I have a question. I want to know this. And then you start to find data. But sometimes there's no data around. So it's same like journalism. Sometimes you start because there is something and you can just grab it and start your research. And sometimes you have to find the source, and sometimes it's both. Sometimes you're a creator for a data set. So I can tell you just one story we do now a couple of years. It's about fatalities caused by right-wing extremists in Germany. So as you know, we have a Nazi problem still in Germany where people are against migrants, and they really, some small groups are really dangerous. And if you want to answer the question, how many people died because far-right extremists killed them, you will get some numbers from the government, but we knew that they have a problem because they don't want to label these cases as a result of far-right extremists. So we started just to create on top on these official numbers, just by reading newspapers and so on, and creating a new data set just to get the whole picture. So as I mentioned, in the official statistics, we have 109 victims since reunification. And I think 2 weeks ago, we published a new update for our data set. We are talking about 100. So sometimes there's no data set or it's a bad data set. And then the part of the data journalist to say, okay, we need our own investigation. And I tell you the structure of our investigation, and I prepare all the columns, and then the colleagues start their investigation and write exactly in this categories what they found out. And later I can just create a map or I can count it. And yeah, sometimes this is the role for data is just to structure an investigation.
Thank you. My next question, and I'm looking now at our time. Time is running. The question comes from Nora Jafar. For a journalist whose main specialty is editorial, how long does he or she need to master the handling of data journalism tools?
Yeah, I don't know, because I would say just start it, because where's the point where you would say I'm a data journalist? Because as I mentioned, I didn't decide it at one point just to become a data journalist in 1.5 years later. It was just, we had projects I could learn from other people from their skills. And it was learning on the job. It was really doing things, trying it out, try and error. I think it's the first point. And you will learn step by step and becoming better and better, because you need real life projects just to learn new skills. So I can't say there's the time of 2 years, because things are changing. So I need to learn every day again.
Would you say like every journalist nowadays should have programming skills?
I would say every journalist should be able to handle data, to find stories in data. Okay, you can just put some skills on top, but the first, a journalist has to be able to investigate sources, and there is a huge source like data, and just to find the patterns and getting idea what's inside and what's not inside this data set. I think this is an important skill for journalists in the future. Starting with tools. So perhaps I can say use, for example, the free tool Tableau. This sometimes my first look on the data set, just throwing it in and looking on it. Are there patterns inside? And then I can go deeper and deeper. So just learn first of all these tools. And the second step, just learn pure skills in Python or R, just do the next step, or to get data. We call it scraping. If you put information outside of existing websites and putting into a structured data, this step by step. But first of all, try to use the tools and then try to get some coding skills just to understand data.
How do you think data journalism will develop and change in the future? كيف سيتطور هذا النوع من الصحافة في المستقبل برأيك؟
What I see is that the data set's becoming larger and larger. So we have some hardware just to work on data, and we learned that we always need new hardware and better databases. So and we are partners in the newsroom. As you know, I work in the investigative department, working all the projects in my examples, they are based on structured data, but very often we got unstructured data, like someone hacked a company and you have emails, PDFs, scanned photos, or some Word documents, all in different folders, and you need just software to understand which persons are inside. I think this is a very big future for data people to help the other colleagues to just find the small story in this huge amount of unstructured data.
Mr. Sascha Venohr, head of the data team at Zeit Online, thank you very much for your valuable contribution. We are very delighted to have had you with us today. شكرا لك سيد ساشا فينو، مدير قسم صحافة البيانات في سايت أونلاين. شكرا على هذه المقابلة وعلى هذه المعلومات القيمة. شكرا لجميع المشاركات والمشاركين الذين كانوا معنا اليوم، وصلنا إلى ختام هذه المقابلة. We came to the end of today's session. أتمنى لكم التوفيق في إنجاز مشاريعكم، وإلى اللقاء وأمسية طيبة. سعدت جدا بهذا اللقاء، وابقوا سالمين. Stay safe and thank you very much for this session. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye bye.